Hi, this is Walcott Fine Art, and I'm Jason Walcott. For oil painters, one of the most challenging and important colors to master is green, especially for beginning landscape artists. In today's video, I'll mix some different greens from various blues and yellows, and also show you how to control tubed greens to make them work for you. So, let's go have some fun with green. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my art channel. As I said in the introduction, today we are going to be taking a look at green. So for the first part of the video, I'm going to show you how to control tubed greens. But then in the second half of the video, I'm going to show you how to mix your own greens from yellow and blue, which is the way that I recommend you learn how to use green in your landscape paintings. But to start out, let's take a look at these tubed greens. Now here I have some Rembrandt olive green, which I mixed with a little white, and some Phthalo Green, which I mixed with a little white. The olive green comes out of the tube. This is a mixture of several different pigments. The olive green, as you can see, comes out of the tube a very dull sort of gray green. Now you could just go to the store and buy a tube of this and say, okay, I'll use that. But because it is so dull, it's very limited in what it can do. So it's good for certain applications, and it could be used for foliage and trees in, like in pictures, if you're painting a picture that has an overcast, cloudy day, something like that. But most of the time, if you're just starting out, you're going to probably have Phthalo Green, which is this color. Now, Phthalo Green is the most common single pigment green that you'll find at the art supply store, wherever you buy your paints. The problem with Phthalo Green, though, is that's the color that creates most of the beginners' problems when they try to paint trees or foliage, and they end up with this out-of-control green. A lot of that, I think, comes from the phthalo. And the reason is that Phthalo Green, you'll see if you look here where I mix it with some white, is way too cool. When you mix it with white, you get this really bright sort of aqua bluish green color, and that is not the color that's natural for leaves and trees and foliage. So I went outside and I grabbed these leaves off the tree so we can take a look at some real, honest-to-God leaves compared to the paint. And you can see, if you compare those two, the green of the real leaf has a lot more yellow in it. And that's the key to getting natural-looking foliage, is to make sure that you keep your greens warm rather than cool. And the problem with Phthalo Green is that it's way too cool. So if you were to try to use Phthalo Green, let's say you wanted to use it in a painting, you can control it by mixing it. There's three ways to control it that are the best way. You can mix in a little brown, like here I have some transparent oxide brown. So if you mix that with the Phthalo Green, you're going to get a more olivey, toned down green. So it gets rid of that astringent, real oversaturated aqua tone. But you can see, even though it's toned down now, it's still kind of cool. So you might be able to use a color like that in, oh, let's say maybe shadows, but you can still see, even with that, you're running into problems. So you can also tone Phthalo Green down with black, but again, you're going to wind up with, although it desaturates it and gets rid of that really super bright color, again, you're not really getting a foliage type green. You're just getting a gray, duller version of this. So the third way that you can cut down on phthalo green a little bit and control it is by mixing it with its complement. And since phthalo green is a cool green, if you mix it with a warm red like cadmium red light, that'll tone it down too and get. But you're getting a lot of gray in that, of course, because red and green are opposites. So if you add more green in to make it a green-gray, you're still ending up with a color that's too cool. So you can see that even though trying to control the tube greens with these colors helps a little, you're not getting the yellow warmth that you need for natural looking foliage. So at some point you're going to have to mix these with yellow. And if you mix phthalo green plain by itself with, let's say, a cadmium yellow like this, again you're going to wind up with this super saturated green. It's like, wow, really bright. So then you're going to have to go back and tone that down. So there you're getting into a green that looks more natural, but that's because you added both the yellow and the brown to it. That's how you have to control it. And see, now you're getting a color that's closer to this. So the best way to control phthalo green right out of the tube is to mix it with a yellow, like I just did, and then into that add either a little bit of black, a little bit of brown, or a little bit of complementary color. And that's the best way to control a tubed green. But I recommend that you actually learn to mix your own greens from different blues and different yellows, because that will give you the most control over the colors that you mix when you want to paint trees or foliage. So let's move on to the second half of the video, and I will show you how to mix green from different blues and yellows, and I'll explain a little bit about how to get the different kinds of greens you might want to use in your paintings. So let's move on to part 2. In this part, I am going to show you how to mix green from various yellows and blues. So to start off, the first thing I'm going to do is explain to you how this works exactly. Now, we're all familiar with the color wheel, and as you can see along the color wheel, it's a gradual, morphing from one color to the next around the outside of the wheel. So what that means is that you have certain colors that have leanings to them. So in other words, you have yellow, and you can have a neutral yellow, or you can have a yellow that leans more toward red and is a little bit slightly orangey, or you can have a yellow that leans towards green. It's slightly greenish. It's still yellow, but it just has that little bit of a lean to it. Likewise, you can have a blue that leans toward green, or a blue that leans towards red. So what that means for mixing greens basically is the closer together a yellow and a blue are on the color wheel, the more bright and saturated green they're going to make when you mix them. For example, if you took Cadmium Lemon and Phthalo Blue, both of those lean toward green. So they have a lot of green in them. So when you mix them, you're going to get a green that's very saturated and bright. Conversely, Ultramarine Blue, which leans towards red, and Cadmium Yellow Deep, which also leans towards red, if you mix those to make a green, all that red in them is going to counteract the green and make it more neutral and dull. So as artists, we can learn to use that to our advantage, especially when painting landscapes with a lot of green in them. So I have 5 of each color here that I'm going to mix. And the yellows I'm going to be using are Naples Yellow, Cadmium Lemon, Cadmium Yellow Medium, Cadmium Yellow Deep, and Yellow Ochre. And the blues that I'm going to be using are Cobalt Blue, Ultramarine Blue, Phthalo Blue, and Cobalt Teal. Now this last one here is black. And a lot of artists, who are just beginning their journey as landscape painters are often surprised to learn that you can make really nice landscape greens simply by mixing yellow and black. So in this case, you can think of black as being a kind of a blue that's just very, very, very dull. But you can use it to make greens. And I made this little chart here for me to lay out my mixes on. So we'll take a look at what each one does, and you'll kind of see what I was talking about with the mixes of the different colors depending on where they're located on the color wheel and how they make different shades of green. And just a quick note, I just want to say this aside. This Naples Yellow that I'm using, this is genuine Naples Yellow. And I'm just doing that because it's what I use and I want to be kind of complete in this demo and show you everything. If you want to invest in getting genuine Naples Yellow, it's a wonderful pigment. It is very, very expensive. So just be aware that in your more or less expensive paint lines like Gamblin, Utrecht, Lucas 1862, those kind of paint lines, which are very good, but if they have a tube labeled Naples Yellow, it's not going to be genuine Naples Yellow. It's going to be a mix of other colors to imitate Naples Yellow. So you might not get quite the same results. So I just wanted to say that ahead of time. So anyway, let's start by let me do an upfront example of what I was talking about. So I'm going to take some Cadmium Lemon. And when you're mixing a green like this, always start with yellow. And then mix tiny amounts of blue into it. Don't take blue and then mix yellow into it. And the reason for that is that the blues are always much stronger. So you'll waste less paint getting to the color you want by starting with yellow and then adding a little amounts of blue. So this is Cadmium Lemon, which leans toward green. Now if I put a little bit of Phthalo Blue in here, in mixing in with this, which also leans... Phthalo Blue is very strong, so I just need a tiny bit. Phthalo Blue also leans towards green, so if I mix that in with the Cadmium Lemon, you're going to see that I'm going to get a really strong, bright, use a little bit more, really strong, bright, saturated green. So if you wanted to use that for a landscape, you might want to even tone it down a little bit because it's pretty bright. So that's that mixture there. And of course, the brightest and most green-leaning blue that I have put out here is the Cobalt Teal, so that would produce an even brighter green than this. But I just wanted you to compare this to, now let's take Cadmium Yellow Deep, which leans towards red, and Ultramarine Blue, which also leans towards red. And you mix those, and you're going to get a green that is much more dull and basically like an olive green. So you can see the difference there. Just, there's so much red in the yellow and the blue that it's really dulling that green down, because red and green are complementary colors, which means if you mix them, they'll cancel each other out. So you can see what a difference we've got there just from mixing 2 different blues and 2 different yellows to make green. that depending on where those colors lie on the color wheel, you'll get vastly different results. So I'll go ahead and I'll fill in the chart. So we'll start with the Naples yellow and Cobalt Blue, which is a little bit of a... Now Cobalt Blue is it's an interesting color because it's very neutral. It's a very neutral blue. And it might be harder to see on camera, but you can definitely see it when you look at it. It leans neither toward violet nor toward green. It's very neutral. And it's a nice color. But you can see that the Naples yellow gives the mixture kind of an airy sort of atmospheric green. And that's what I like about the genuine Naples yellow. And even though it looks light, you know, next to the Cadmium Lemon, you realize when you start to mix with it that it produces those mixtures which are a little less saturated. That's mixing Naples yellow with ultramarine. Now, anytime you mix a green from where blue is your phthalo blue is your blue, you're gonna get a more saturated green because phthalo blue, number one, it leans towards green, and number two, it's a very intense pigment on its own. Phthalo blue is a modern synthetic organic color, and the hallmark of that group of pigments is that they're very, very saturated and bright. The quinacridones fall into that family of pigments. There's a lot of the more modern ones that you see that aren't traditional colors. So I'm gonna and I mix it with the cobalt teal, and I get a nice bright sort of spring green. And then finally with the black. It makes kind of a olivey, mid-tone sort of olivey color. But do you see how that's actually a really nice green that could be used for very natural greens in a landscape? And that's the yellow and the black. And mixtures of yellow and black tend to give it that really nice sort of natural, neutral look. Going back to the Cadmium Lemon row, we'll go through each of those colors. So now that I've completely filled in the whole chart, you can easily see what a variety of different greens you can get from mixing these different blues and different yellows. And of course, as you notice, we move from the lighter, brighter yellows down to the duller, darker yellows. The greens get more neutral. So, these colors in here with the phthalo blue and the cobalt teal, even those are less saturated and less obnoxious than that mixture we made at the beginning of the video with the phthalo green. So I really recommend for beginning landscape artists that you play around with this, experiment with it. These greens in here that you get with the blacks and the darker yellows like the cadmium yellow medium or the deep, these are really beautiful greens in here for landscapes. As you can see, that's a very close match right there. So try to avoid using phthalo green if you can for foliage, for leaves and trees. It has its uses, but not for landscape greens. And so play around with mixing different blues and yellows and see if it doesn't help improve your landscapes. So I thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and click on that subscribe button so you won't miss the next video. And why not spread the joy? Be sure to share my videos on your favorite social media. Don't forget to head on over to my website, walcottfineart.com, where you can see my art, read my blog, or when you join my newsletter list, you can win free art. Every month, I'll choose a lucky winner from my email list, and that person will receive a mini original oil painting. There's a chance to win every month, so be sure to sign up today so you don't miss out. Plus, you'll get my fun newsletter. See you next time!